before this, when we would talk about like social classes or economic classes, you'd have the nobility at the top, you'd have the peasants down here, and then maybe the clergy over here. Starting in about the 1500s, when we started this particular class, you were also starting to see the rise of a merchant class, kind of a middle class. Now, what's going to happen over this time is we've talked about this already. As power centralizes more around the king or the central government, the nobility don't really have the same role that they used to play. Nobility become being noble is a lot less important class-wise. What matters is not whether you're noble, but whether you're a rich noble or a poor noble. So let's just stop talking about the noble crap and just start talking about rich. And that's going to be, again, the new reality here that we're talking about. So if we look at the classes, there's going to be the rich, and those are the merchant class. Now, the nobles who are smart from the 1500s and 1600s made that switch, made that transition, took their power and their money and they invested it in things and they became that merchant class. But a lot of the nobles didn't. So you could still be nobility, but who really cares? Because that doesn't really matter that much. What matters is whether you are wealthy. So we're just going to stop talking really about nobles from here on out. We're going to be talking about the rich. They're going to use now. What the rich might do is they still might want to get some of those marks of coolness that are still out there. Like they might use their wealth to buy land, and that's the mark of nobility. But that also gives you some tax breaks and some things like that. So instead of the nobles becoming wealthy, now you have the wealthy buying into nobility. And again, that's cool. That makes you feel like you've made it, but it also weakens or what it means to be a noble. The rich, the merchant class, they were big supporters of the Hanover monarchy. So this is the new king, the new royal family that takes over after William of Orange, and then after that comes Anne, and she doesn't have any kids, and so the next in line are these is King George, or is George from this place called Hanover in the Holy Roman Empire. He comes over, doesn't even speak English, but now he's the new king, and we're going to get the Georges from here on out. And what do the Hanovers want? What does the king want? The king wants one thing, stability. Well, two things, I guess: stability and lack of interference in business. Now, I got an asterisk here. We're going to come back to that asterisk at the end of the class because laissez-faire and Adam Smith and all that kind of stuff, lack of interference in business by the government, that's actually not going to be true at all. But let's just work with this for now. They want stability and let business grow. And of course, obviously, the merchant class, they like both those things: stability, lack of interference in business. This is good. So that's one group. The second group is going to be the middle class, and it's going to be like small businesses and white-collar jobs. When I say the middle class, I don't want you to think about the middle class today. We're just saying they're not the super rich, but they're also not the super poor. They're doing all right, but they're not living like, super awesome. All right, so that's middle class. That's going to be a growing group as time goes on. But at this point, it's a relatively not huge group. In the cities, it's doing all right. It doesn't really even exist in the rural areas. In the rural areas, you just have the rich and you've got tons of poor. All right, so then that leads us to the third class, which are the commoners. And this is the mass of day laborers. These are the ones that some of them will have pretty steady jobs. But for the most part, you're basically hiring yourself out day by day. You don't know where your next job is going to be. If you are lucky, you will get a stable job, but even then it doesn't mean that you can't be fired that day and they'll pick somebody else up. During bad times, the whole class suffered poverty, everybody in this. And again, when I'm talking about commoners, I'm probably talking about 90% of the population of the cities. We're not talking about, this is an even split. This is most of the people in the city are this. And when there's bad times, nobody's hiring any workers. You don't have insurance to fall back on. You don't have unemployment. You don't even really have banks. You have the money that you make that day. If you don't make any money that day, you are screwed. In good times, or goodish times, maybe we should say, things aren't like super bad. what's going to happen is you're going to get lots of babies. And part of this has to do with the fact that what you're going to do with your money is you're going to eat. And when you eat, you get the calories. And when you get the calories, then the babies that you have are going to actually make it to not baby. They're going to make it to kids, and on and on and on. And people are going to be dying less. So you're going to end up with very fast urban population growth. Now, if you're in the city and you're one of those other classes, you're the rich class or you're the middle class, and let's say there's good times for about 10 years. You're looking around the city. You're already seeing the city grow for a lot of reasons, urbanization and all that. But now you see all these poor people starting to have lots and lots of kids. Are you feeling okay about this? Are you thinking this is like a good thing, that London needs more people? No. But there's not birth control. There's nothing like that. And what this is going to do is going to exacerbate crime, violence, those other social ills we were talking about on the other side. And one of the things early on in this movement of urbanization, this is way early. Jonathan Swift, you guys read this. Jonathan Swift's satire, A Modest Proposal. You guys read this. Again, it's satire. He didn't really mean it. But that's sort of the idea here, is let's kill two birds with one stone, literally, by essentially eating the babies of the poor, and everything's going to work out great. There won't be more poor in the next generation, and we'll have plenty of food. Everything works out. But one of the main things that you do want to see here is this is what eating babies looks like right there. It's a baby in a pot. One thing you're not going to see with the commoners is political rights. We did talk about constitutionalism. We talked about how people we are starting to move towards something that looks a little bit more like democracy, but not yet, and definitely not with these guys. So when we talk about political rights, we really mean those other two classes. We don't mean the poor. All right, I got one more slide here that I want to talk about along these lines. So we had, just to go back a second, we had Jonathan Swift here with this idea of, again, when you're living in the midst of this, you recognize these problems and you want to think about how do you get these solutions. So let's fast forward a little bit to this guy named Thomas Malthus in 1798. Now he's coming towards the end of this century, but this is something where if you've been alive in London in the 1800s or the 1700s, you've been watching this happen. You can see what's going on, and things will go through really, really good times. The population will grow, and then things will go to bad times, and everything will collapse in on itself. Crime will go up, violence will go up, starvation, blah blah blah, and then it will happen again. And so at the end, Thomas Malthus is saying, let's take a look at this. Can we say something about these things? As I'm looking at this. So he's going to make this argument. It's a pretty famous argument. Population increases exponentially. So again, two people have babies, and then those babies are going to have lots more babies. So every generation you're going to grow. And so population is going to grow, again, not like it's going to grow like this right here. It's going to continue, it's going to increase as time goes on. Food production is going to increase arithmetically. Now you could say, oh wait, there's more people, so all those new people can be growing more food. Well, the problem is all the good places to grow food are gone. So where's that next person going to grow food? In a place that's not as good at growing food. And so as you increase, your ability to grow food doesn't actually increase. So here's your problem now. You can see where this is going. Pretty soon there's going to be more people than food. And what's going to happen? Do people just curl up and die of famine? No. I mean, sometimes you'll get famines and like that. But for the most part, people will see this coming, and you'll get wars being fought over resources. You will get famines, but you'll also get disease because there'll be less food, and so people will be more susceptible to disease. Catastrophe is what we're just going to call this. Catastrophe is going to happen, and people are going to die. You could make an argument, which I'm sure some people will. The coronavirus spreading around the world right now the spread of it has something to do with the population increase. That essentially population's growing, and here comes the coronavirus to sort of wipe out a few of the people. Population will then, when this catastrophe happens, population will decline and stabilize, and then you will start all over again with this process. And again, if you were alive in London in the 1700s, you were watching this happen. So the conclusion that he reaches is this: find a way to control population growth or nature will. In other words, what he's going to argue, he's going to say, people are going to die. Maybe we should make sure the right people make it and the wrong people die. I know that sounds really weird for me to say it that way, but for example, the poor. We don't need more poor, so let's make sure that they're the ones that you get the population decline in, and not the good people in society. That's going to be the conclusion he's going to reach. It's a messy conclusion, obviously, but you can also understand that sort of thinking from somebody who's not from the poor class, the commoner class. Okay, so now you're going to watch a quick video which is going to talk about Malthusian theory, kind of how we think about it today, whether he was right or whether he was full of crap. And then you're going to watch a video on factories, and we're going to talk about how factories lead to capitalism, and we're going to start seeing this idea of capitalism.